Three, two, one, and we're live. So, welcome back to another edition of the Dream Dojo podcast live show. Here today, joining me is Crystal from, you may know her from many of the Discord communities that she's involved in. A lot of great work has been put in over there. So, Crystal, would you mind just introducing yourself briefly and your background in this field?
Hi, I'm Crystal. I'm 15. I live in Colombia, but I'm from the UK, and I got involved in the community in October of 2022, pretty much. And since then, I've been mostly focusing my efforts or like being involved with the community on Discord, but recently I've been trying to branch out a bit, and I was helping run and organize stuff on Dream Cafe for the Discord server Dream Cafe for a while, and right now I've kind of stepped back and I'm trying to like work between communities, but I was on there for a while, and I really enjoy the community, and I've loved learning over time about lucid dreaming, and it's super fun, and I enjoy the topic. And meeting new people as well has been amazing. So I feel a great dedication to this community, and I'm very glad to be here. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. So, yeah, guys, if you're just joining us now, it looks like we've got two people watching, Crystal. So thank you for hopping on. Just let me know really quick in the comments section. Can you both hear us okay? Does the audio sound all right? Because I can adjust a few things here. I'm down in my dark basement. So, yeah, the walls can echo a little bit, but I can adjust the microphone volume if I need to. But anyway, thank you for that introduction, Crystal. I really do appreciate you being here and taking the time out to talk with us. One of the main reasons I wanted to invite you on is because you've got plenty of experience in the field. I just found out recently that you had your first lucid dream around the age of 8. Is that correct? Or
I believe so. Although I wasn't really practicing anything back then. I happened to listen to a podcast or radio show with my father, and it was on the topic of lucid dreaming, but more specifically in the context of fighting nightmares. So I basically had this idea of what lucid dreaming was and the ability to control or influence your dreams, and that really stuck with me. So with this sort of added knowledge, I kind of had that kind of generated a bit of intent for me to lucid dream, and so I did lucid dream a bit, but not really consistently, until I discovered Explore Lucid Dreaming's channel in around the middle or early 2022. And I fell for a bit of his sort of warped, distorted information at the time. Although I then joined his server and I sort of took a step back for like 6 months or something, but then I really got involved. So I feel like I sort of had this background, so it was already kind of interesting to me, and I love psychology in general. It's pretty fun. So that's nice. Why does it look like you're no longer in the call with me? Why does it look like you're no longer in the Hi,
can you hear
are
me?
you back?
Yeah,
Was that me who disconnected, or was that you who?
I
I'm
think
a
it's
little
my
confused.
internet. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah,
mine.
I'm not
Sorry
quite
about that.
sure because don't worry at all. I know that my internet as well with my current location isn't too reliable, so it
Yeah,
could be
I
a
actually
combination.
I pulled up my phone and I could hear you on the live stream, so I'm gonna take full credit
Oh,
for the freezing screen. But yeah, so let me just paraphrase and make sure I caught everything. So basically, you had your first experience when you were much younger, and for Some reason your dad was listening to a podcast on the field of dreams. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, we were listening to it together, and so I learned about it through that. It was a short podcast in like I don't remember the name now, but it was like in a series of sort of psychology related topics, and one of them was on lucid dreaming, and this was like 7 years ago, probably more actually, but around there. And I didn't really do anything with it, and I wasn't doing any techniques at all until I sort of rediscovered it in 2022.
Awesome, awesome. So it sounds like your dad is a very cool guy. Anybody who exposes their children to dreams is winning parenthood in my book. What I love about your story is that you still discovered it on your own. So you had somewhat of a foundation and a familiarity due to that past experience. And would it be fair to say that you sort of knew what was possible because you had already, experienced lucidity before? Did that somewhat set you up for success?
Well, I did sort of have the feeling like I feel like I'm capable of doing this quite easily because I knew that I'd done it before. So, that did help me generate intent, I suppose. Um, so that I suppose was good, but the truth was that the podcast was talking about using mnemonics and visualization to get out of a recurring nightmare, if I recall it correctly. And I don't remember the details because I was like 7, but I'll say that like that's mostly what they were talking about. And they didn't really go into, I don't believe they went too far into like techniques or specific things that you can do. It was more about mnemonics to try and like basically incubate lucidity into this guy's recurring nightmares. And I'll also add that sort of everything sort of came full circle because almost a year ago now, when I was with my dad at the time, and it was like I was telling him I taught him about lucid dreaming, everything that I knew. And it was kind of funny because I don't know if he remembers, but, it was kind of like that a long time ago. We talked about it. And then now I'm able to teach him about it, all of these stuff that I knew. And, he was really interested and stuff, although he doesn't really care to do it. But it was pretty
Wow.
fun.
The student has
Yes.
become the teacher. I cannot wait until,
Indeed.
I mean, honestly, my daughter is going on 2 years old, and she's teaching me things every day, right? How to see the world through fresh eyes. So I think that's a beautiful story.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
so we actually had a few more people join us. We're up to, I think, 5 viewers now. Welcome, Alexandra. Welcome, Al. And then Annie had a question for you, Crystal. And usually I like to save these for the end, but I think they joined us after we had started and they want to know, how long have you been lucid dreaming?
So since I properly started practice, I basically I started sort of early to mid 2022. I did like 1 or 2 nights, but then I basically quit. And what got me back into the practice was sort of early October of 2022. I got a seemingly random lucid dream um, without practicing any techniques. And then I decided, you know what, I could go back to that because I'm still in that one server, that Discord server. I could check out what I'm supposed to do. And so I started from, I think it was around the 11th of October, I started practicing. And the truth is that I haven't been completely consistent with my practice, but I know that for the first few months, I definitely was. And I got a lot of lucids. I went up from like maybe 3 or 4, 5 lucids in my entire lifetime to like 30 pretty like within a few months.
Wow,
I remember I once had like a glorious week of getting like 4 lucids in a week. That was fun.
that's amazing.
Um,
Yeah, I think that's really
yeah,
impressive.
but
I don't know if I've had
I
4 in a
haven't
week, to
quite.
be honest.
Yeah, I haven't quite gotten back to that level, but that was fun.
Very cool. Okay, so you've been basically you rediscovered your dreams, right? So when you were much younger,
Mhm.
a podcast sort of triggered the possibility and you experienced lucidity, albeit briefly. And then much more recently, you said October of what was it, 2020, 2022?
2022. Yeah,
October of
recent.
2022. Yep.
Relatively.
Uh, you
Yeah.
started shifting your focus, you got more involved online, you started consuming some resources, and now you're at the point where you've established success for yourself. You've somewhat became a master of your own dreams, and you're willing to share your experience with other people, which is great. Considering there's so much to learn in this field, I feel like a lot of the reports are anecdotal, but we can definitely learn what works for other people and try it for ourselves and determine what works for us. So maybe you could share just some brief tips and tricks or ideas of what your practice looks like, or maybe just general advice for somebody who's just beginning.
Yeah, of course. Well, I one of the reasons why I got so involved in the community is because I loved like helping out with teaching people. So over time, I think what I've noticed is, well, on the server I was most active in, it has almost 40,000 members, although hardly anyone is active, or some accounts aren't active, but not everyone is involved in the server. And why is that? Because unfortunately, what I see most often is people essentially giving up, or deciding not to do it, or being lazy about it, or forgetting about it, their practice, or the whole idea of lucid dreaming. So I think my absolute number one advice to any beginner could be, you have to stay dedicated and consistent with your practice. And I can say this from personal experience too, because when you start dropping your practice, when you decide to take a break, it can really set you back. Now, taking breaks, of course, can be good with anything, but lucid dreaming is a skill like any other, and it takes dedication and consistency if you want to go really far. You shouldn't be limiting yourself in any way, and you should really put your head down and put your mind to it if you want to go far. Um, so I think that's my number one thing. I think it's also important, I could go on about doing the right thing, like not doing good techniques, and then afterwards you can start to change them and customize them to your own liking. As well, doing techniques for at least a month each before switching is like a general rule, you could say. I guess that's most of it. I should also say, don't get fed misinformation. Don't trust everything you hear online. Um, even question the words that I'm saying right now with some common sense. That's just a general practice for everything on the internet these days. Because
Yeah.
I think one of
So
the most important things that you can hold to heart is the fact that your dreams are your own. And someone else tells you about your dreams, you can take it or you can leave it. It's like up to you what you want to do with it. You shouldn't let other people define your dreams. You shouldn't let other people tell you that you can or can't do something in your dreams, or that your dreams are this or that. Your dreams are completely your own, and it's up to you to do everything regarding them and to control them in every sense of the word.
I love that. Yeah, we're definitely big on empowering the individual here to you know remember their own dreams, to work with them in terms of analysis, to incubate their own dreams, whatever people want to dream about for themselves personally, and then to exhibit control from within the dream. Those are all highly subjective and deeply personal aspects of our practice that can be influenced by other people, but should always feel empowered yourself to take control of. And what I really loved about what you said, Crystal, was that consistency is the key. And I couldn't agree more. I can tell you from experience that um, I haven't been the most consistent in my practice, since I discovered lucid dreaming. But what I've found is when you try and you put in the effort and time to really practice the right way and to study the right sources and connect with the right communities, then you can have success. but it does take work. And really, the work itself doesn't have to feel like some labor of love. It's really just that. It's being present in the moment and enjoying the entire process. So another thing that resonated with me based on what you said was that if you stop practicing, your skill will fall off. It's like any other skill. It takes, time and effort and momentum almost, right? So think of it like your dream journal. If you're recording your dreams or if you haven't started one yet, it can be somewhat intimidating, right? To stare at a blank page. But one of my favorite quotes is that you can't mess up a blank page because it's as perfect as it'll ever get, right? So when you first start your dream journal, really what you're doing is starting a habit, something you might not have practiced before. And it's sort of like a mindset shift that what I'm doing is important. I'm taking time to remember my dreams, setting the intention, and my dreams are important. So starting right there with that mindset is also key because we can't teach you the right attitude about your dreams. You have to um, discover their importance for yourself. So if you go into it thinking, well, dreams don't matter and they're nonsense, and I don't need to remember those. There's no point. There's no purpose. Then you're probably not going to be intrinsically motivated to keep up with your practice. But if you go into it with an open mind, even you don't even have to believe in the power of your dreams. Just go into it thinking critically, maybe there is more than I realize. And like a voyager on a journey, just document the entire process, starting with the time you go to bed. And that's probably the most important part because you can't dream without sleep. So if you start focusing on like your bedtime, your wake up time, and your sleep environment, those are all factors that can shift the quality of your sleep and thereby the quality of your dreams. So consistency is key. Yes, I also really like to hit on the attitude component there. You have to go into it with the right attitude, and at the same time, enjoy the process. That's another thing we said because if you're trying to take the shortcut straight to lucidity, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I can go to bed tonight and I'm going to wake up and control my dreams so I can fly like Superman or see this deceased loved one or whatever your goal may be. Those are all great goals to have, and trust me, flying can be super exciting, but it might not happen on the first try. It might, it very well could. It has for plenty of people, I'm sure. But going into it with an expectation could, lead to some level of disappointment also. So what I found to be effective for me, and maybe Crystal, you can, you know, tell me if this resonates with you, is to enjoy my regular dreams, to enjoy sleep first, right? If I'm enjoying my evening routine and I'm reading a nice relaxing, book or listening to an enjoyable podcast and I'm winding down for bed and I'm making a ritual out of it, my body knows what to expect and so do I. It's easier to relax and wind down and get a good night's rest. Then if you set the intention before you fall asleep to remember your dreams, um, and you're starting to tell yourself that you don't need to control your dreams. You don't have to have specific dreams. You can just enjoy whatever comes to you. And sometimes you'll wake up, you might not remember anything, and that's okay. It happens. There may even be like a hardwired biological reason that happens. So not only do you have to shift your mindset, now you have to train your body to to think and behave differently. But then if you do capture any dreams the next morning, really take some time, write it down, whatever you remember, just jot it down because much like the momentum we mentioned earlier, you will forget within minutes, moments even of awakening, and the dream will be lost entirely. So just like you have to put in the effort day in, day out for lucid dreaming practice, it starts with, putting in the effort day in, day out for your sleep and dream recall. And enjoying that process is really what I think gets people through the tough times. What do you think about that?
I totally agree. I mean, I think you're saying some very important stuff there. I'll start off with just mentioning that sleep schedules are not only important for your dreaming and dream state and lucid dreaming practice and all of that, but it's just important for life in general. It improves lots of psychological and biological aspects of everything in life. It's just such an important thing to do, to practice for waking state in general. You'll find, even if you aren't putting much time or effort into your dreams or aren't doing it for dreams. I thought I'd just add this. And so, yeah, I think what you're saying is very important, because what many people miss when they're lucid dreaming and when they're doing practice regarding this is that lucid dreaming is inherently a practice of dreaming. So if you are not interested in your dreams, you won't go far with lucid dreaming. The important part is to be interested, to be infatuated, to be obsessed, to be interested, to be fascinated by your dreams in order to be able to lucid dream. This is the important part, because you can't
So
forget
true.
about normal dreams. And if you're forgetting about normal dreams, you won't go far with lucid dreaming. It's so important to enjoy these other aspects, because they are the most important aspect. When you become interested in your normal dreams, you will understand your normal dreams, which will cause you also to become lucid. And if you're having a positive mindset with your practice in that way, you'll go further. And this kind of segues into some stuff that I've been thinking about, like mindset changes within dreamers, in terms of not looking at journaling negatively and trying to use mnemonic devices, or no, not mnemonic, that wasn't the right way. Like devices to generate intent of like seeing things positively. I don't know, that's a very general way to describe it. I'll also add, just as a side note, I tend to I read something someone said like a little while ago, and it's kind of become pretty interesting to me, the idea that we shouldn't really be saying intention setting, we should be saying intention generating. So I'm really nitpicky with language, and I don't really have a problem with other stuff. I just personally like to say generating intent, because um, everyone already has some intent if they're doing anything. So when you generate it, that's just generating more intent than what you already have, because you're not like creating it from nothing, because if you're doing anything, that means that you already have some. So if that
Hey,
makes any sense.
it does actually. Although I do like intention setting. I think that's ingrained in my brain, but I love
All right, that's yeah.
I literally just said this to somebody. I love reimagining language because I feel as if it's a living thing, and learning a bit more about etymology and the origin of words has always intrigued me. But taking something like intention and making sure that people understand that it's an action and not so much an idea, right? Is that fair to say? Because intention sometimes just seems like, oh yeah, I'm gonna intend a lucid dream. I intend to have a lucid dream. I will probably maybe have one, and then there is, I intend to um, I intend to go to my favorite restaurant this weekend because I'm free. That's something, that's a plan that I'm making. And I think if people approach intentions much like they do their waking life plans, then they'll experience a shift in paradigm where now we're taking action oriented steps to achieving a goal, as opposed to showing a vague interest with a relative disposition. So I hear what you're saying, and I totally agree. Don't get discouraged by expectation, really, because it does take effort, and it is a learnable skill. But experiences vary, right? So it depends on your current sleep hygiene. How are you sleeping now? Are you getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep? Are you sleeping at regular hours, or are you sleeping in on the weekends because you're off work and you're drained, or and then you have to wake up by an alarm during the regular week because you have to be at work or school, or you have obligations. So um, there's plenty to be said about starting with the basics and I don't want to bore any of the more advanced listeners who may be tuning in. So maybe you could just uh, shift tracks for a second and talk a little bit more about maybe like a personal anecdote or lucid dreaming experience that inspired you and maybe share with others.
But yeah, I just first like to add that there's no difference in intention to go to a restaurant tomorrow than there is to lucid dream tonight. This waking state
Yes.
intent is the same as the dream state intent. So it is an idea. Intention is specifically an idea. It's not an action. It might be an idea to do an action, but it's not an action. So what you said about that doesn't really make sense to me, but I don't have any problem with people saying intention setting. I just wanted to quickly explain why I say intention generating instead, whose idea I stole from Seal Dorian, who's just an amazing oneiromancer who I met via Discord, and he's really helped me along my journey, I suppose. So, right, moving on, I suppose. Well, if you'd like, I think a personal anecdote I could share. I really love pressing the idea of like stuff to do with being interested in your dreams, but we already went over that. So I'll say as well, not only be interested in your dreams, but don't be completely obsessed with the idea of completing dream goals or doing this and that. Don't make your dreams a task or something like that, because essentially what happens, especially in my personal case, is the idea of I had so many ideas and so many things which I just had to do as soon as I got lucid that it became overwhelming, and I would end up doing either none of them or I wouldn't have any fun doing any of them. So I feel like this is something which a lot of dreamers face. So my sort of advice is that the thing is, I sort of had more fun in my dreams nearer to the start of my journey because I was so interested in my dreams. So to add on to this, not only be interested in your dreams, but just put some intent into just being happy with being lucid itself as the idea, or being in a dream itself. And just take it all in rather than force yourself to do this or this or this, because the phenomenon of being lucid deserves happiness in itself. And you shouldn't feel sad if you didn't manage to do one of your dream goals or one of that thing that you've been trying to do for so many weeks, maybe even months or years now. You can just be happy to be lucid. And because it's just not a good idea to be ever upset with what you have achieved, because achieving lucidity itself is an accomplishment and you shouldn't downplay that, or else you'll be really staggering your own progress if you're feeding such negativity into yourself. I think that's something I'd like to say.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's so true. And many people report that their first lucid dreaming experience is cut short by their excitement. And so it's quite ironic that we spend all this time and energy to get lucid only to wake ourselves up, right? So,
Well,
stay
excitement doesn't wake you up. It's just the
okay.
association between excitement and waking up. So this is another example of, like, this is what I say about no one should tell you what the rules of your own dream state are. That's a better way of saying it than what I said before. There are no rules of your dream state. You are in complete control of your own dreams in every single manner, aspect, way imaginable. So I don't believe that. Well, I know for a fact that I've been quite excited in dreams before and I haven't woken up, because
True.
I know that the only thing that can wake you up in dreams is when the dream ends, or if you want to wake yourself up, or if you associate an action or idea or something with waking up. So I wouldn't say excitement is anything to
Well,
be worried
fair
about.
enough. But I will also say that just because you want to wake up doesn't mean you will, right? So,
That
I
is
mean,
true. Yeah.
What we're discussing here really are varying scales of experience. So lucidity, I feel, is an aspect of clarity, and there's also control. And the two are not the same thing. So you can become aware you're dreaming and not control anything, and it could even potentially be a nightmare. Or you could be able to control quite a few things and feel a sense of agency, almost as if you were recalling a waking life memory without experiencing lucidity in the moment that occurred from within the dream. Is that Would you agree with that, Crystal?
Yes, so I feel like essentially what you're saying is that awareness and control, well, lucidity and control are different ideas. And I completely agree. They're often confused, mixed up. And by the way, when I was saying control before, I meant like literally your dreams are a part of you. So at the end of the day, you can control them. I'm not saying that everyone will have control over their dreams, but I'm saying that they are inherently a part of you that you can control if you work at it in some way. There are a man of ways to control your own dreams. So yeah, I definitely believe that awareness and control are different. They can be different on different scales in different dreams, and they are different from one another and often confused.
Yeah. So the difference in experience we all encounter is much like the difference of a definition of words, right? While it may seem trivial to mince words and to defer back to our technical definitions, that's sort of how we relay information, right? And if somebody says something we don't agree with, or they use a term in an unconventional way, that's an opportunity to bridge the gap of understanding. And I feel like in the field of lucid dreaming, there's so much subjectivity that people tend to tune each other out when they encounter an experience that doesn't necessarily coincide with their own. For example, the delineation between astral projection and lucid dreaming is a very big point of contention in this field, and it may very well be arguing about the nature of existence, as far as I know, right? So, but but to sort of recap what you're saying, the terms we use matter, and the terms that we collectively agree upon, that's how we make progress. Because if one person is saying uh, mild is a type of hot sauce, another person is saying that it's a mnemonic, and the third person is saying it's a mantra, you know where's the confusion, right? It's because everything we were talking about is made through mental associations. You can't define one word without a previous conception of other words that you use to define that word. So with lucid dreaming, I think it's so useful to just start with our base level experience. We all dream every single night, whether you know it or not. We all dream. If you're sleeping, you're dreaming, and there's plenty of studies that back that up. And it goes to argue, why are we dreaming, right? I mean, we have plenty of evidence for why we need to sleep, but why do we need to dream? And theories abound. There's no official theory to explain that function in our brains, but nonetheless it happens. So it's up to you. Do you think dreams matter, or maybe they don't? Me and Crystal both agree that there's great value to be gleaned from just recording your own dreams, doing some introspection, and maybe even some preliminary analysis about the themes and the people, the places, the things you're feeling and experiencing, and ultimately appreciating that experience for what it's worth, not necessarily trying to change things, right? I mean, we went off on this tangent when we were talking about um, people trying to control their dreams and being sad, just being satisfied with lucidity, because whether for whatever reason, wake up um, too soon after realizing you're asleep and dreaming. Um, there's people who can maintain that state and immediately want to shift, their location, or manifest, something right in front of them, a person, a thing, an object, They want to go somewhere else and do something exciting like flying. And what often beginners discover is that control is a whole nother skill beyond lucidity that has to be cultivated and developed over time. Very rarely, but maybe, you listening, don't let me, discourage you. You could wake up within the dream tonight and take immediate control of everything. But what do you want to do with that? That's really where I think the potential lies. And for me personally, now that I've had my fair share of lucid dreams, one of my favorite things to do is to just sit back and enjoy the show, because there seems to be some subconscious faculty that produces a very lifelike and realistic environment without my conscious doing. So why not just sort of sit back and observe and try to learn from that experience? I feel like there's a lot of potential there also. And especially if you feel anxious or excited, nervous, scared even, um, ground yourself in the moment, whether it be in waking life or within the dream. You can utilize a common practice in psychology called the 5 4 3 2 1, right? 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, and really ground yourself in the moment. And the idea is to focus. I think that's the key to taking yourself out of a state of overwhelm and just focus. And what it does is sort of tune into your perception and awareness, which was another key term I heard you bring up, Crystal. So that's just what I like to do personally, is really focus on remaining present in the moment, whether I'm awake or asleep, and think about, where am I now? What am I doing? Where was I before? What was I doing? What am I going to do after this? And eliminate all those distractions and focus on just, the person in front of you, the conversation we're having. It's easy for me to dart between, the chat box on this screen and the camera and my cell phone, which has the live stream on it. I could be focused on 10 different things, but I feel like the best connection comes when it's just two people, sitting across from each other and having an honest conversation. So I appreciate the places where we agree and disagree, and hopefully together we've sort of furthered the understanding of whoever listens to this. Um, but before we get off of here, because I know this is a short stream, I just wanted to give the stage back to Crystal and see if there's anything else you felt like we needed to address, or you wanted to talk about it a bit deeper, and then maybe just let some of our audience know where they could find you, even if it's not you personally. Maybe just share, Discord in general.
Yeah, so I don't really have anything to add. I think this has been a good conversation. I feel like the sort of controversies and misunderstandings of over language, something which I read a little while ago, like kind of recently, was something about how it helps to sort of apply filters to resource materials and to quote, and just sort of ignore some of the things which you disagree with and sort of like melt things down and think to yourself, what is the important part of what I'm looking at, hearing, reading, whatever. Because, it's really not a good idea to like look at a resource and write it off because they used a word that you don't like, you know. So I also like to add that, the lucid dreaming sort of landscape of, words and terminology and things that you recommend is constantly changing. Like 3-4 months ago, some of these ideas weren't that we talked about even now pretty casually weren't like around, like as in weren't sort of like as prominent as they are now. And it's really quite nice to see it changing so fast, even if it does get a bit confusing. And I'm always glad with where things tend to be headed. I think the quality of information goes up. Anyway, that over with, I think I'd like to say that I'm currently working with a group of people on creating a series of lucid dreaming courses called Lucid Deep Dives. This is basically a sequel to our series of courses which were made and presented on Dream Cafe, the Discord server, although these new courses we're trying to sort of distance them from any particular community and make them sort of for all communities, between all communities, from people from all communities. That sounds oddly nice. And so they basically, these deep dives, we sort of dive deeply into specifically streaming topics with the help of many knowledgeable people from across the community. The last one we did was about a month ago on the topic of wild, and it was presented by Skyfall and Luna. And they did an amazing job going really deep into the topic of wild in ways that you don't find normally, because some of this information isn't readily available in guides, or stuff like that, like all together compacted into an hour-long session. So that's what I'm working on organizing. We should have the next session out within a week or two, ideally in like 4 days, but I'm not sure if we're going to manage that, but hopefully we will. And it should be monthly. So that's what I'm currently working on. And right now I'm not sort of associating myself with any particular place in the community. I'd rather work in between. But you can find me on Discord if you want to. I prefer that you don't ask me for advice or random questions. But if you sort of want to challenge me on anything that I say or have been saying, I'm up for that. Or if you're wanting to like provide any sort of interesting comments or something, I'm good with that. But I'm kind of don't really have enough time to just kind of guide people. Sorry about that. So you can find me on Discord. My username is, I guess I'll give my main account, crystal.dragon. And so, yeah, I think that's about it. I'm working on this project mostly these days, and you should be watching and waiting for new stuff to come out regarding that. It's very fun to create, and I learned so much myself through creating it with such amazing people. I see a few questions. Should we be going through them?
Yeah, that's awesome. So thank you for just being here today and everything you've done for the lucid dreaming community at large. Putting together a group of people who are working on useful information is great. And I already love what I've seen coming from that group. And I look forward to learning more from these lucid deep dives. Um, we do have a few questions. And the last one, or the first one I see here, is from Al. And they say, I'm always curious about people who have been successful at extending time in dreams. Has Crystal had an experience with this? Have you?
Personally, I don't really think that I have much. I do sort of somewhat understand the concept, though. It's usually referred to as time dilation, and it's not really extending the time that you spend in a dream in waking state. It's just extending your perception of the time within the dream state. And now I'm gonna have to like draw off of what I've heard from other people here, definitely. But to my understanding, it's what you do is you just associate something, an action, like you would with any other dream control, with time seeming to be slower. So an example is, I know there's someone who, when he goes to a specific place in his dream world, he associates that place with time moving slower, or associating it with like being bored in a classroom because then time feels slower. So it's basically just changing your perception of time within the dream, even though it's not really possible to make yourself actually dream longer. Time dilation is definitely real, and you can time dilate for basically as long as you can imagine, because there's really no limits to your dreams at all apart from your imagination. Your
This is
imagination is the limit.
Yeah, this is where we can agree and disagree both at the same time. So I feel obligated to say that the um, certified research that's been done on this topic has determined that we do or the passage of time is relative to waking life. So a second is still a second, a minute is still a minute. However, time dilation is highly subjective, and it also speaks to Einstein's theory of relativity, if you really want to get down to it. And I think the perception of time is really what Crystal has talked about here. And again,
Yes.
nobody can control your perceptions of the dream. If you feel, that hot stove, you know, was really hot, it lasted forever, or that whatever the case may be. It really depends on what your expectations are. But Al, let me just take a different approach to your question. I think that the best way to extend time in the dream is to have higher quality sleep. And so if you're not having a balanced sleep cycle, then you're not hitting all of the essential stages of sleep: non-REM, light, deep, and REM. And certain things can throw off your balance. So, for example, if you're consuming alcohol, tobacco, nicotine, marijuana, those all have been shown to affect the quality of REM sleep you get. And in particular, REM is where we seem, keyword here, seem to have the most vivid and detailed dreams. So if you want to, in theory, extend time in dreams, you really should be focusing on improving your quality of sleep. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but sleeping the minimum 7 hours of night, sleeping around the same time consistently to sort of signal to your body exactly what time it is and what it should be doing. And then really just improving your recall. Because if you're not, like for me, when my recall improves, the clarity of the dream, the vividness improves. And so, uh, one dream I might write a few bullet points on like who was there and what I was doing, and in a much more detailed dream description, I might write down exactly how I was feeling, down to the moment, and the passage of the dream itself, even as I'm recollecting it, could seem like it's passing in real time, present progressive. So, yeah, I think Crystal had some great ideas about perception and how you can just shift your mindset to change uh, how you perceive time. And then also my advice on improving overall sleep quality in order to extend dream time. And then the next question was, do either of you have a particular way to wake yourself up? So I'm going to start with this one and say, no, I don't. I have been plagued with nightmares for much of my dream work, and it's what has led me down the path to lucidity. And I've had my fair share of lucid nightmares. Although I've experimented with different ways of waking myself up, mostly by grounding myself in physical reality. Um, what works for me might not work for you because I haven't been that effective in the past. So maybe Crystal can share some insight about if you've ever tried something that's worked for you to wake yourself up if you really, really wanted to.
No, I've never really had something which a situation in which I've had to wake myself up. I mean, I don't really tend to get nightmares very often, or when I do, I quite enjoy them because they're pretty like relatively exciting. To most of my dreams tend to like lack emotion, but so I don't tend to wake myself up for any reason unless you count like battling problems with false awakenings, but that's a whole other topic, obviously. So, I mean, you can associate anything or like a keyword or an action or a thought even with waking up. If you want to,
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea to do. Although personally, I don't, I'm just kind of generalizing there.
Yeah, I mean, it made me think of something a lot of people do and have had success with. It's anecdotal, but if it works for you, it works. Maybe just vocalizing, saying things out loud, and hearing that sound has a certain power of expectation, right? So, oftentimes there's our internal monologue of thoughts and ideas, and usually when we're externalizing, we're conversing with another person, there's some substance there. So I would encourage you to speak out loud your intention to wake up. Like, I don't want to wake up now. I will wake up now. I will close my eyes and wake up. And some people believe that if you open your eyes in the dream, you're more prone to opening your eyes in real life. Mixed, reports there as well. But both things I would encourage you to try, see what works for you. Don't believe it just because I said so. Um, on to the next question. Annie says, and I see Sina Zaid, Sina Zade. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce your name, but thanks for joining. Um, Annie had another question about going to the same places, or I guess persistent realms in the dream. And if you do those places change when you fall asleep in a different location? Have any thoughts on that, Crystal?
Mm, my dreams don't tend to. I suppose my dreams do change depending on sort of like the circumstances of my location, but not really the locations of the dreams. I think it's just sort of the themes of the dreams more in general rather than specifically locations. I also don't really have I don't have any lucid persistent realms, although I do have non-lucid persistent realms that I created just um by sort of either the same dream world being spread across like two dreams after like in a row, or over multiple nights I feel like I return to the same place. Like for some reason, I think there's like a very large often case of people having the feeling of nostalgia in their dreams as if they've been there before. And I know that's kind of like similar but not exactly this question, but I've had stuff like that where I feel like I know that I actually have been to this same place before. Sometimes I can define it more because of the feelings and emotions associated with it rather than like
Yes,
the
that's so
way that it
true.
looks.
That is exactly what I was gonna
So
say. You took the
I
words
feel
out of
like,
my mouth.
yeah, yeah, like sometimes I feel like I go back to the same specific town for some reason, and it's not a town that I've ever been to before. It's just like a combination of things that I associate with towns, I suppose. But it's always so it seems to carry the same feeling, so I tend to know when I'm there, even if it's not like too obvious. Um, so that I do enjoy. I also had some sort of strange like hotel persistent realm or something else. So I doing persistent realms and lucid dreams is still one of my dream goals, and I'm getting there. But in non-lucids, it can still be quite fun.
Yeah, so I agree wholeheartedly with what you said, and I'm actually gonna go slightly left field here and make a movie suggestion to anybody listening. I know we have like half a dozen people or so still here, so thank you all for watching. Definitely drop a comment. Just let us know you're here. If you have a question, let us know before we get off. But my movie suggestion is What Dreams May Come, and it's one of my favorite, more serious Robin Williams movies. And I think they do a really nice job of playing on the idea of um conceptualizations and the essence of things, how through association we could feel like we're at a certain place without it looking exactly the same, or maybe we could feel the presence of a loved one, by a smell in the air, or by the memory of a specific place, if that makes sense. But through those associations, I myself have many recurring dreams and many recurring dream themes, and really everybody does. So much like the daily habits and routines of waking life, your dreams often reflect what you're experiencing while awake, and thereby themselves also have recurring patterns and themes. And when you start to really record your dreams, I think one of the most valuable takeaways from your dream journal would be going back to analyze it, and maybe even highlighting specific dream signs, they call them, that um, are recurring in your sleep. And then you could, in turn, every time you experience or encounter them while awake, you do a reality check and you become more critical. Um, but yeah, so same kind of place, um, different, or I'm sorry, let me think about how I want to say this. So it's sort of like having the same feeling about a thing, but it's not the exact same place, it's not the exact same person, but it's something that might remind you of them. That's often what I
Mhm.
experience in my dreams. And I would also encourage you all to look into the memory palace technique, which is somewhat of a mnemonic memory device. Um, Go ahead, and I got a couple people who've seen the movie. So Annie and Elaine, I'm so glad you've seen it. If you haven't, take our word for it, the three of us now, and just check it out. It's a great movie. It's a little deep, but I think it's a must watch, especially from Robin Williams, um, being one of my personal favorite actors. But yeah, so you said if you do those places change when you fall asleep in a different location? So the memory palace technique is taking something that's familiar to you and creating associations to help your memory. For example, walking through your childhood home. If that's a place you can recall quite vividly, then use that. If you have maybe a an office space, or somewhere else intimate to you, like your vehicle even, and it like the back of your hand, and there's this dent here that you got from the idiot who ran a stop sign, and there's this cigarette stain from your uncle who wasn't paying attention that one other time, and you know where everything is there. That's the important part. I like using my childhood home because I still can even keep my eyes open and walk through the front door, and I remember the wooden texture of the door and the grooves that could give you splinters, and the way the numbers hung on the door, and you could take the number 0, and it was kind of loose, and you could jiggle it back and forth. And when you walk through, the first thing you would see was the love seat on your left and the wood stove in the corner. And you could take each of those memory pegs and create an association. So for example, if I knew I had to go to the grocery store and I wanted to use my memory palace in order to encode a memory I have with some short term information. So let's say I got to get milk, bread, and eggs. Well, the first thing that I walk up to in my memory palace is the wooden front door. And so I'm going to imaginarily take a gallon of milk, and I'm going to pop the top off, and I'm going to squirt the gallon of milk all over that wooden door. And that's my first memory peg. It sounds crazy, but the more ridiculous you make it, the more effective it is at lasting in your memory. So and the important thing is that you walk through the same path every single time you go through your memory palace. So it has to be the door, then the number, then the love seat, then the wood stove. So if I already got the milk on the door, the next one would be bread. And it's kind of, maybe I didn't make this easy for myself, but now I'm associating the number 0 with bread. And maybe I'm going to imagine taking a big loaf of bread and squeezing it really, really, really tight and making it into the tiniest little loaf of bread anybody's ever seen. And then I'm going to hang it right there by that loose nail on my front door. And now I remember, okay, milk and bread. And then the third thing is the love seat. And let's say it's eggs. And so I'm going to imagine when I come through the door with my groceries that I'm going to take each egg out individually and crack it on the love seat, and I'm going to make an omelet using the wood stove, but I'm going to put the eggs on the love seat. So that's sort of how a memory palace works. That's a very crazy way to explain it. But for me personally, when you say something like, do you go to many of the same places in a dream, or do they change based on where you fall asleep? Um, for me, memory palace is something that can change slightly, but the associations you make are what really define the feeling in the moment. And that's much how like my dreams are, if that makes any sense. So, all right. So actually, we've been 58 minutes now. Crystal, we've talked twice as long as we intended to. So I'm going to assume it was a pretty good conversation. We actually have quite a few viewers still here watching as well. So thank you so much for doing this with me. I know that the people on my live stream here on Facebook really appreciate you being here. And it looks like they've got a ton of questions for you just going back through the comments. So I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to say to the people before we hop off?
Well, I enjoyed the conversation festival. It was quite a great opportunity to share knowledge, information, discuss some topics. And thank you to everyone listening. Well, I hope you all sort of got something from the conversation, anything you can. You're welcome to the Discord platform. as the platform itself. Um, there are many cool communities on there. I would not recommend just searching up lucid dreaming as a key term on your to search it up on the explore discoverable service thing. I'd recommend opening Discord, and then you can find way more, except at the same time, not all lucid dreaming servers you can find out there are reliable. I'd go for the larger ones. But anyway, yeah, there you go. Thank you all for listening. I hope that you all have a good day, night, evening, afternoon, morning.
Yeah, and most importantly, sweet dreams, right? Okay, so everybody just said great conversation. Thank you both. Thank you both. Oh my God. Thank you. Great conversation. Thank you. So a lot of people enjoyed it. And I know I did. So Crystal, hopefully we can keep the conversation going some other time. But it's time for bed for me personally, myself. So I'm gonna go hit the hay, and I hope you all have a great night. Peace.
All right, good night and good luck. Thank you. Good night.